want you to stop whatever you are doing right now. Look up from your phone or your screen or wherever you are watching this. And I want you to think about the last time you looked out of your window at night. Really looked. Not a glance. Not checking the weather. Looked at the street, the parked cars, the shadows between the houses. Because here is something that the three people in tonight's stories all had in common. They all felt safe. They all had locks on their doors. They all knew their neighbors. They all lived in normal houses on normal streets. And not one of them knew, for weeks, in some cases for months, that someone was outside, watching, every single night. These are three true stories submitted by real people on Reddit. Three people who discovered, completely by accident, that they had been under surveillance, that someone had chosen their house, their routine, their life, and had been observing it from the outside with a patience and a deliberateness that still makes them unable to sleep properly to this day. I am going to read these stories exactly as they were written, in their own words, because these are not my stories to change. If you are watching this alone tonight, you might want to check your window before we begin. Most of us have experienced it at some point. That feeling. You are sitting at home and something makes you look up. You go to the window and look out at the street and everything looks normal. But something made you look. Something you cannot name. We dismiss it. We tell ourselves we are imagining things. We tell ourselves we are being paranoid. The people in tonight's stories told themselves the same thing. The difference is, they were not imagining it. What makes these stories different from every other horror story I've shared on this channel is this. There was no break-in. No one came through the door. No one was hiding inside. The threat, if you can call it that, stayed outside, watching, waiting, learning. And in some ways, that is so much worse, because it never fully ends. You cannot point to a moment when it was over. You just stop seeing them. And you spend the rest of your life not knowing if that means they left, or if it means they got better at hiding. 3 stories tonight, all true, all submitted by real people who still think about this every single day. Let's get into the first one. I installed my Ring camera about 8 months ago. Not because anything had happened, just because my friend had one and said it made her feel safer living alone. I set it up one afternoon, checked the app, watched a few minutes of footage of my empty driveway, and forgot about it. That is important. I forgot about it. It was just there. Background reassurance that I stopped thinking about within a week. The feeling started in February. Nothing specific, just a low-grade unease that I could not attach to anything. Checking my locks twice before bed when I had never done that before. Looking out of the window before I turned the lights off. Getting into bed and lying there with a vague sense that something was not quite right without being able to say what. I put it down to stress. Work had been difficult. I was not sleeping well. Anxiety can manifest in strange ways, and I am not someone who is normally anxious, so I assumed my brain was just processing something in the background. It was my sister who suggested I check the camera footage. She had come to stay for a weekend and mentioned that she had noticed me checking the window before bed. She said, "You have a camera, why not just look at what it recorded?" I almost did not bother. I almost said there is nothing there. I almost dismissed it the way I had dismissed everything else for the previous 3 weeks. I did not dismiss it. I opened the app. The Ring app keeps footage for 30 days. I went back to the beginning of February, the point when the unease had started. and began scrolling through the overnight recordings. The camera covers my driveway and the street directly in front of my house. Motion activated. It records whenever anything moves in frame. A car, a person walking past, a fox, anything. Most of the overnight footage was empty. Occasional cars, a fox 3 times, a neighbor's cat. But on the 8th of February at 2:17 in the morning, I found something. A figure standing on the pavement directly across the street from my house, facing my house, completely still. The camera recorded for 40 seconds and then stopped. The motion had ceased and the recording cut out. The figure had not moved enough to keep the camera running. They were standing so still that the motion sensor had stopped detecting them. I sat there for a moment, looking at that paused frame. A person standing across from my house at 2 a.m. I told myself it was someone walking home who had stopped to check their phone. It happens. I kept scrolling. The 9th of February, 2:19 a.m., same figure, same spot, same stillness. The camera recorded for 30 seconds and cut out. The 10th, 2:21 a.m., same figure. I stopped scrolling. I went to the calendar in my head. 8 days I had been going back through. A figure on 3 of them. I kept going, all the way back to the 1st of February. And then I went back further, through January. By the time I had gone back 6 weeks, I had found the figure on 19 separate nights. Always between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Always the same spot. Always completely still. Always facing my house. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice. I called the police that night. They reviewed the footage. They confirmed what I had found and added something I had not noticed. The figure always stayed for exactly the same amount of time, 40 to 45 minutes, every single night. Arrived between 2 and 2:30 a.m., left between 2:45 and 3:15 a.m. Like clockwork, like an appointment. The police traced the footage back as far as the app would allow, 30 days. 19 appearances in 30 days. They could not identify the figure from the camera quality. Dark clothing, hood up, always positioned just far enough from the streetlight to avoid clear illumination. This was not someone walking past. This was not someone checking their phone. This was someone who knew where the streetlight ended and the shadow began. Someone who had positioned themselves precisely in the darkness. They knew about the camera, the angle of the footage, the way they stood, slightly turned so their face was never fully toward the lens. They knew about the camera, and they had positioned themselves to avoid identification while still being able to see my house clearly. Then the detective showed me something that made the room go completely silent. She pulled up the very first recording where the figure appeared. She pointed to the date. It was the 3rd night after I moved in. I had been in that house for 3 days when they first appeared. I had not even finished unpacking. I had not established any kind of routine yet. I had barely told anyone my new address. They had been there from almost the very beginning, which means they had not followed me to that house. They had found me there, or they had been watching before I even arrived. The police increased patrols in my area. The figure stopped appearing on camera immediately, which the detective said was consistent with someone who was monitoring police activity in the area. They knew the patrols had increased. They never identified who it was. The footage was never clear enough. No arrest was ever made. I moved out 4 months later. Not because I was asked to, not because anything else happened, but because every night when I turned my lights off and got into bed, I thought about that figure standing across the street in the dark, standing there with that patience, that routine, that deliberateness. And I could not make myself stop thinking about what they were waiting for. Before we get into the second story, I want to take just 10 seconds. If you are watching this and you are not subscribed to Mr. SHM yet, hit that subscribe button right now. I upload new true horror stories every single week. Stories exactly like this one. And if you subscribe, you will never miss one. And if this first story already has you unsettled, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you have checked your own camera footage recently. I read every single comment and I respond to as many as I can. Now, the second story. This one is different from the first, because in this story, the watcher was not a stranger. The first note appeared under my front door on a Tuesday morning. I almost stepped on it when I came downstairs. A folded piece of paper with no envelope. On the outside, just my house number written in careful, neat handwriting. Inside it said, "I live nearby. I have noticed someone watching your house during the day. I do not want to alarm you, but I thought you should know. I will leave another note if I see them again." I stood in my hallway reading it twice. Then I looked out of the front window at the street. Normal Tuesday morning. People leaving for work. A dog walker. Nothing unusual. I told myself it was a well-meaning neighbor who had probably seen a delivery driver parked outside or someone checking their phone and had overinterpreted it. I kept the note but did not think about it seriously. The second note came 5 days later. Same handwriting, same careful fold. It said, "He was there again yesterday between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. He parks a gray car 2 streets away and walks. He stands on the pavement opposite and watches. He's always gone before the school run." I read that note 4 times. Gone before the school run. Whoever was writing these notes had been watching long enough to know the timing. To notice that the watcher left before children appeared on the street. That was not an accident. Whoever was watching my house knew when there would be witnesses and arranged their schedule accordingly. I started working from home that week. I positioned my desk near the front window and spent 3 days watching the street between calls. I saw nothing. The third note came 10 days after the second. It said, "I saw him again today. He has been 3 times this week. I think he knows when you leave in the morning. Please be careful. He knows when you leave in the morning." I sat with that sentence for a long time. For him to know when I left in the morning, he would have had to watch long enough to establish my schedule. Long enough to know that my car was gone by 8:30 and did not return until 6. Long enough to feel confident about when the house was empty and when it was not. I did not tell the police yet. I am not entirely sure why. I think part of me still wanted to see it for myself, to confirm it was real before I involved anyone else. So I did something I had never done before. I took a day off work without telling anyone, without posting anything on social media, without changing my routine in any visible way. I left in my car at the normal time, drove around the block, parked 2 streets away, and walked back on foot through the back alley behind my house. I let myself in through the back gate, went upstairs, sat in the spare bedroom which faces the front, and waited. At 11:15, a gray car drove slowly down my street. It did not stop. It did not park. It turned at the end and came back, drove past again. Then it parked 2 houses down. A man got out, walked to the pavement across from my house, and stood there. He was in his 40s, ordinary looking, dark jacket, hands in pockets. standing completely still facing my house with an expression I could not read from the upstairs window, not aggressive, not anxious, just watchful, patient, like someone waiting for a bus that they knew was coming. I photographed him from the upstairs window. Then I called the police. The police arrived within 10 minutes. He was still there. They approached him calmly, and he did not run. He was cooperative, gave his name, gave his address, answered their questions politely. He claimed he was looking at a house on my street that he was interested in buying. There were no for sale signs. There were no properties listed on that street. The officer pointed this out. He said he was interested in approaching the owners directly. They could not arrest him for standing on a public pavement. They took his details and told him to move along. He thanked them pleasantly and walked back to his car and drove away. But before he left, just before he got into his car, he looked up at my house, not at the street, not at the police car, at my house, at the upstairs window where I had been standing. He looked directly at the window for 3 seconds. Then he got in his car and drove away calmly. He knew I had been watching him from up there. He had known the whole time. The police ran his details. Nothing on record. Clean history. Ordinary man by every measurable standard. He never came back after that day. The anonymous notes stopped. Whatever dynamic had existed, whatever he had been waiting for, it ended when he knew that I knew. I have thought about that a lot over the years. The fact that discovery was what ended it. Not the police, not a restraining order. Just the knowledge that I had seen him, that I had been watching him the same way he had been watching me. I never found out who sent the notes. I knocked on every door on my street. Nobody admitted to it. Nobody knew anything about it. The notes just stopped the same day he stopped coming. I still think about that sometimes. The anonymous neighbor who noticed before I did, who watched the watcher week after week and carefully documented everything, who never revealed themselves. I do not know if that should make me feel grateful or afraid. My partner and I bought our house 3 years ago. We spent the first year doing it up gradually, painting, new kitchen, and last spring we finally got around to the back garden. It had been neglected and overgrown when we bought it, and we had left it until we had the time and money to do it properly. We hired a landscaper. He came in with a small digger to clear the overgrown section at the far end of the garden near the back wall. We were both at work when he started. He called me at 11 in the morning, and his voice was strange in a way that made me pull over immediately. He said he had found something in the ground, a bag, buried about 8 inches down near the back wall. He said he thought I should come home. It was a waterproof dry bag, the kind hikers use to keep things dry in their packs. Bright orange, sealed at the top with a roll closure. It had been buried carefully, not thrown in, not dropped. Placed there. The earth around it had been packed down deliberately. Inside the bag, sealed in a plastic Ziploc, were photographs. Printed photographs. Glossy. The kind you get developed at a pharmacy. Photographs of our house. I want to be precise about what was in those photographs because the precision of it is what made it so disturbing. There were 47 photographs in total. I counted them 3 times. They had been taken from multiple angles and multiple locations. Some from the street at the front, long lens, our front door and living room window clearly visible. Some from an elevated position, possibly a nearby roof or upper floor of a neighboring building, showing the back garden and rear of the house. Some from what appeared to be directly outside the back wall of the garden, our bedroom window visible, curtains sometimes open, sometimes closed. And some 3 photographs specifically, that appeared to have been taken from inside the garden itself, standing in our garden, at the back door, looking in. Someone had been inside our garden. Someone had stood at our back door and photographed through the glass. But the detail that made my partners sit down on the garden steps and put their head in their hands was the seasonal progression. The photographs spanned at least 18 months based on the changes visible in them. Summer photographs, the overgrown garden in full leaf. Autumn, the leaves coming down. Winter, the garden bare and frosty. Spring of the following year. Summer again. 18 months of photographs. Taken before we did anything about the garden, before we ever had any reason to dig near that back wall. 18 months of someone watching our house, developing the photographs, and burying them in our garden. Returning to bury new ones, coming back over and over again. The police came. They took the photographs as evidence. They examined the bag, the Ziploc, the prints themselves for fingerprints and DNA. Before they took them away, the detective went through them carefully and sorted them by what appeared to be chronological order based on the seasons. She laid them out on our kitchen table, and we looked at them together. The most recent photograph, the one at the top of the chronological order, had been taken 3 days before the landscaper found the bag. 3 days. Whoever had buried that bag had been back 3 days ago, had taken a new photograph, had opened the bag, added the photograph, resealed it, and reburied it. They had been back 3 days ago. The detective looked at us across our kitchen table and said, "Your garden renovation may have ended this. If they come back and find the bag gone, they will know it has been found. May have ended this, not will. May." The police investigated for 4 months. They found no fingerprints on any surface. Whoever had handled the bag and photographs had worn gloves consistently. DNA from the bag itself returned to no match on any database. The photographs had been developed at a self-service kiosk, untraceable. No arrest was ever made. No suspect was ever identified. We still live in that house. We finished the garden. It looks beautiful now. My partner says it would be letting them win to move out. And I understand that. I agree with it in the daylight. But some nights I lie in bed and I think about those photographs, about someone standing in my garden in the dark, standing at my back door, looking through the glass, taking a photograph, putting it in a bag, burying it under the earth, building an archive, a collection of us. And I think about the fact that we only found the bag by accident. That if we had never landscaped that corner of the garden, if we had left it another year, another 5 years, that bag would still be there, growing heavier, growing fuller, and we would never have known.